it's Charlotte here at Galactic Rats YouTube. So I've got a video today which is one that I see a topic I see a lot on Facebook groups, and this is about shavings. Are shavings safe for rats and other small animals as it sort of comes into it? As you see, one recommended for one group and one for another. One country might recommend shavings, another saying no, never use shavings, they're really terrible and really harmful. And really I just wanted to address that with some research and what I believe to be the truth. This is my own opinion, and this is opinion based on reading articles and scientific research data, as well as having been in the small animal community for most of my life, and especially heavily involved in the last 10 years since I've been keeping rats. So I just wanted to give you that background to begin with. So especially in the last 10 to 15 years, the idea that wood shavings are harmful to rats and other small animals is an opinion that's been repeated numerous times, and that's especially across internet platforms and has become increasingly prevalent since kind of the internet became so popular. Things like forums and Facebook groups and things like that became more popular, and also one person's opinion could write a website or an article or a blog, and then that would get shared and repeated as if it's fact without anybody really doing any sort of background research on it. And I think that's how we kind of have these conflicting information and conflicting opinions on what is suitable and not suitable for rats and all animals. Really, I see it on lots of different things, and maybe bedding as a subject for other animals, like my reptiles might be another video in the future, because it's another really hot topic across lots of different areas. So just start with, no, I don't believe that shavings are bad. On the surface, those who believe they're really bad sound pretty compelling, and I did believe that for a point myself before I'd done too much research and speaking to different people. In softwood there's a compound called a phenol, and people who are saying that it's bad are often quoting wood shavings have phenols and phenols are really bad, so don't use it. But what is a phenol anyway? Weird word. And a phenol is an organic compound found in most plants. It's sometimes referred to as a volatile hydrocarbon. Essentially it's a smell, it's the aromatic compound. So when you smell pine or cedar, that nice woody smell, that's the phenols that you're smelling. It can be acidic when concentrated, and it's synthesized actually for medical and for industrial uses. So not all phenols are bad, but why are they considered bad? Why are people saying that phenols are really terrible? It's commonly banded around that phenols can cause cancer, liver issues, respiratory issues, skin irritation, and there is pet owners who've said that this is true, this has happened to their animals when they've been kept on shavings. And so why am I saying that it's a good thing, that they're fine? Because that sounds really terrible, and I agree, it does sound terrible, and I would never want any of that to happen to anybody's animals. But some chemicals are in small concentration are harmless, but in bigger doses are lethal. So this is a quote from someone called Corinne Feo, and she's written a really good article which I'll quote below called The Truth About Pine Shavings, where she has her expertise is rabbits, and she has addressed this in the context of rabbits, but it is also very relevant to rats as well, and to all small animals essentially. And this is a really good example that she used that I wanted to I couldn't have thought of a better example myself. So an example is benzoic acid and Listerine. So while benzoic acid is toxic if ingested in large doses, the amount that we put in a bottle of Listerine is safe, and therefore it's safe for us to use as humans. And so it's important not to overinterpret what scientific studies are showing us. So just to move on from that quote, just because something in concentration can cause harm doesn't mean that it's not safe. It's important when quoting and using scientific studies that they are correctly understood and interpreted. So you could read an article to say that a chemical is really, really toxic, but yes, if that's in concentrated form, of course it might be toxic, but the small amount, think for example, people say that there's cyanide in apple pips. If you eat an apple pip or an apple core, you're not going to die of cyanide poisoning because the amount that is in there is so tiny. But you could also read an article on cyanide and how cyanide can kill you, and you're going to make 2 and 2 together and make 6. So what's really important to consider is the processing methods used on softwood shavings that can have an impact on the concentration of the phenols in there. This includes kiln drying, which evaporates the phenols in the wood shavings, and it's a process used to kill pests mainly in the wood, and especially in the UK, almost all of our wood shavings are kiln dried. Regardless of whether it says that on the packet. It's more commonly quoted on shavings sold for horses, so the one I use does specify that it's kiln dried and dust extracted, but it doesn't mean that one sold in Pets at Home, for example, isn't. I know that the Pets at Home one, people have contacted them and they've confirmed that yes, their shavings are kiln dried and dust extracted, just as most are, because that's just... They extract the dust. The dust is sold as sawdust, which is a different topic. Sawdust is not suitable, but the shavings themselves are no problem at all as long as they have been heat treated. So softwood shavings, both heat treated and otherwise, have been used in small animal husbandry for the best part of 100 years, probably longer than that. If softwood shavings were so terrible and they caused so many of these horrific diseases, over the past 100 years there would be far more anecdotal evidence onto why they are bad, and there would be dead animals everywhere and nobody would use them at all. But that just isn't the case. They've been used for rabbits, guinea pigs, mice, for a very long time, and I know myself personally and everyone else that I know have not found it to be true that they cause awful skin infections and death instantly, which is what some people may like you to believe. So it's not to say that some animals haven't had a reaction, that they can get sore as a result of shavings, or that some animals might be particularly sensitive to them. And then obviously it's a case-by-case scenario and you will stop using it for that animal. But it doesn't mean that all animals should never use them and it is terrible for everybody. It's the equivalent of saying, oh, somebody ate some peanuts and died, therefore peanuts are terrible for everybody and nobody should ever eat a peanut again, because that's clearly just not the case, and there is other physiological, environmental reasons that something could be causing harm, rather than it being the item or the food or whatever you're using being directly harmful itself. So for example, with someone with a peanut allergy, they have a physiological, biological problem where they causes an extreme immune reaction, and they go into anaphylactic shock and they die. But that doesn't mean that everybody has that problem. I can eat peanuts and I don't go into anaphylactic shock and die. So it's all animals, especially rats, have especially sensitive respiratory systems, and of course it's right to be concerned about what bedding you're using to try and minimise any reactions, but it's also worth considering about what other things might be causing those reactions as well. Is the animal going to have a genetic disposition that might be more sensitive? Is your pet rat from a pet shop where they're not breeding for health and temperament all the time, or is it from a breeder who is purposefully selecting the most robust rats to hopefully reduce any impacts that anything environmental like dust or moving might have on the rats themselves? It's also worth considering the rest of the husbandry as well. So are the animals being fed the correct food? Are they kept clean? Is it correct housing? Is there enough ventilation? Are they being kept near a radiator? There are so many other impacts and things that go on in our houses that can cause animal distress that might not necessarily be down to the bedding. It might be something else that is being misinterpreted. Every single rat and hamster breeder I know uses kiln-dried, dust-extracted shavings. That's myself included. I find them to be really economical, good at absorbing urine and reducing smell, as well as nice bedding for them to build nests with and to dig in and to eat their food as I scatter feed them. It doesn't compact, it's easy to clean out, and I've never had any problems with it at all. In the past 10 years of owning rats, I've lost count of the number of individual rats I've actually owned, but well over 100 individuals. And I also keep tabs, and I speak to the owners of the rats that I've bred and rehomed to them as well. So I have quite a large pool of anecdotal evidence towards this, as well as every other rat breeder I know, some of which that have been breeding for 40 years or more, who do use the same bedding that I do, and have bred thousands, if not more, rats over their lifetime. And although not scientifically studied, it's really strong anecdotal evidence that there is just not this huge problem with it causing lots of horrible issues all of the time. So one bedding that I've often found can cause the most issues, that I've had issues with where it's caused sneezing, is paper-based bedding. And I used some cardboard, I bought a bale of cardboard shredded bedding that was really recommended at one point, and I found all my rats really sneezy on it. I didn't think it worked very well for them. However, cardboard is often quoted as being a safe bedding, and that's of course because it is safe. Everything that we put in our animals' cages and everything in our own lives has an element of risk to it, but it doesn't necessarily make something safe or dangerous, or mean that we shouldn't use it, full stop. I often see on hamster groups especially who are very anti-pine and anti-wood shavings as a bedding option. They are often recommending things like Katie Clean and Cozy and Carefresh, which are bedding options you can buy at most big pet stores. I know here in the UK I think you can get both of them Pets at Home. I personally would not recommend these. I find these beddings incredibly dusty, not very economical, and I've never used them for my rats. I never would. I just know for a fact that they would have a reaction to them. And hamsters are a lot less sensitive to rats, and so it might be fine for most hamster owners, and most hamster owners have obviously had good experiences with it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's better than other options like pine shavings, as long as they are heat treated and dust extracted especially, but even otherwise, as I've said, the hundreds of years of evidence doesn't support that there is a huge massive issue with them causing lots of horrible problems. So I just wanted to shout out to my little Chinese hamster. He's called Beansprout, and he is on kiln-dried, dust-extracted bedding, and he's never had any problems. So to summarise, there's loads of good bedding options out there. You don't have to use wood shavings, they're not the only option at all. You can use chopped hemp, aspen, dust-extracted cardboard are all really good options. Paper pellets are great in litter boxes, however I wouldn't recommend them for the whole cage, as well as shavings if you wanted to use that as an option. So I just wanted to address that because I see a lot of people quoting one line, shavings are bad and should not be used, full stop. Whereas I think there's a lot more to it than that. There is so many different things that can impact our animals' health and life and well-being, and it is not just down to the shavings that you use. It is a culmination of lots of different factors, all of which can have an impact overall. So I hope you found that at least somewhat interesting and useful. Make your own decisions and do your own research about what you're happy to use and what you're comfortable with at the end of the day, and don't just take everything that you see repeated on a Facebook group as fact, would be my advice. So thanks for tuning in. I'm sorry this is a bit of a rantable, but I hope that it has helped and given some context to the conversation that is happening almost every minute of every day on most of the animal Facebook groups I'm in. So I would really appreciate if you found this video useful, that you like, comment, subscribe, share it with people that you think it might help with. It will just help me grow my channel and hopefully get some really good husbandry advice out there to as many people as possible. Have a brilliant day. Take care.